Om Ganatimanandasyang Ganagana Sadakaya Chaksurun Meditam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Namo Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yarabhutare Swayam Rapakaramyantarati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagaditam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Jam Om Aganati Maranda Shagana Gana Saraka Chaksurun Minitam Yanitashmai Sri Gurave Namah Dugame Patimi Andasha Skarapate Gateri Shaki Bayasananda Shantu Santu Badam Badam Mukam Kavit Bakarian Shabarish Panga Gelanga de Katarigane Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Dev Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabaram Tashmai Shri Gurave Namah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kantara Kantana Mostate Jayatam Sarito Pango Mamamide Matirgati Matsavasha Parambaja Radha Ramadana Mohanam Sriman Rasa Rasaram Vamsi Vada Karsan Vener Sunir Kupri Gopanata Striye Sunam Divyad Vrindaranya Kavadrumada Srimad Radnagara Shimastanisto Sri Sri Radha Shira Govinda Prasadavi He Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Cha Jagaritaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalang Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Raduja Mangalam Paridikaksho Mangarayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasadevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Pachodiyatahe Om Mahadevi Vidmahi Vishnu Padniti Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Pachodiyatahe Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sade Sade Hari Pare Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Dire Tamte Kanjana Gorangi Rare Bindapanishare Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamani Hari Pare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Shimari Bhakti Paranta Shami Tanama Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Praskata De Sadhani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Bindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to Motivational Monday, those of you who are joining us live on Facebook. First one we have commenting this morning is Brent. And Brent was at the Sunday feast yesterday, looking very sharp, like a Paka Vaishnava. He's going back to India shortly. Govardhan Eco Village, a place I've never visited, but I've heard a lot of things about it. It's amazing. Self-sufficient, award-winning village just north of Bombay. We had two drummers yesterday at the Sunday feast. We have Nishan and his wife Devi and his mother visiting us this week from New Jersey. They're longtime friends and supporters. We also had I don't know who he was. He just came, played the drum for Jai Krishna during the arti, and then I didn't get a chance to talk to him. But Jai Krishna mentioned that he said he was from Florida, the young fellow. Excellent drum player. A very good Sunday feast yesterday. But we're getting traction again after the long dry spell of March and most of April. Good morning, Natasha. Good morning, Janatari. Seen her on Friday. She came all day Friday to help cooking. Friday, and then again on Sunday, and back again this morning. And congratulations for having received your Bhakti Shastra degree just recently, which represented over a year's worth of deep study, supervised study into the Vaishnava scriptures, Nectar Devotion, Upadeshamrita, Bhagavad Gita, and one other, I forget which one. So we're again overlapping some of the items that we discussed before that hiatus in order to shake off the dust and regain our inertia. What our topic of discussion has been, pretty much since the beginning of February, has been the practice on the part of Sri Narada Muni, both in his previous life and of course in the present life as an eternally liberated soul, chanting the holy names of the Lord. And why do we spend so much time, maybe 15, 16 sessions to date, on this particular personality whose practice it was of chanting the holy names of the Lord? Well, that's our whole practice. Our whole practice is taking our cue from the exalted, liberated devotees of the Lord, headed up, in fact, by Narada Muni, and following in their footsteps. We don't actually get a lot of snow in Utah, but once in a while, once or twice a year, we get really dumped on. There might be 2 or 3 feet of snow. The best way to navigate the snow is not to be the first point is don't be the first person out to walk from the ashram to the temple. It's about the length of a football field. And the second thing is, when you come out, walk in the footsteps. Take advantage of the snow plowing abilities of the first person. Wherever they've placed their feet, place your feet in those holes in the snow. And then you'll go without friction. You'll go without tiring yourself out. Undoubtedly, the first person exhausted themselves breaking through the snow with every step, but you don't have to do the same. You can take advantage of their having gone before you to walk in their footsteps, and that's the whole process of bhakti yoga. Tarko pratishtam sutiyo banir nasho rishir matirbanam dharmasha tatam vitam mahajena yagadasabatam. The whole secret of success in life is contained within the hearts of those who are pure devotees of the Lord, because within their hearts, satam prashangam sits the transcendental Lord, and they accept dictation only from the Lord. In the Krishna book, Prabhupada talks about a bird, I think it's called the chakara. The peculiarity of this bird is it won't drink water from ponds or lakes or any little reservoirs on the ground. It will only take the water directly from the cloud. And if there's no clouds, if there's no rain, then he'll just fast from water. Those pure devotees of the Lord will take only dictation from the Lord himself. They won't worry about what people say, what society says, what critics say, what enemies, what backstabbers. Their only concern is to please the Lord. And they are in touch with the Lord by virtue of uninterrupted, selfless devotional service. Tesham satadayuktanam bhajatam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenayama bina. Krishna says, I dictate their every move from within the hearts of pure devotees. And so, how do we recognize someone who's receiving constant dictation from the Lord? The Lord gives us the cue. Tesham satata yuktanam. Satana means unbroken. There's never a time when they're not glorifying the Lord. And therefore, because of their constant glorification and service to the Lord, yuktanam, they're yoked. Yukta is the Sanskrit word from which we get the English word yoke. By virtue of always hearing, glorifying, and serving the Lord, under the guidance of the previous acharyas, one becomes hooked up. One becomes yoked to the Lord. These neck beads here are our yoke. Just like the oxen wears his yoke around his neck, we wear these neck beads to indicate that we're yoked. At least we're aspiring to be yoked. We're following in the footsteps of our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who followed Bhaktisiddhanta, who followed Gorkishore Das Babaji, and so on up the line of disciplic succession. And the fundamental, foundational principle of all of these exalted souls says, Atmaramastimone andagranti korvadhyatiki itam bhute hari. In the beginning stage, when you're just brushing the dust off the mirror of the mind, reawakening dormant Krishna consciousness, which has been suppressed for who knows how many lifetimes, the tried and true practice is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare. This is the first step that we take to revive our dormant God consciousness. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sada Kavane Shravanandi Siddhi Chidikare. Love of God is dormant within the heart, but it's been covered by forgetfulness, by distractions, by lifetime after lifetime of family, concerns, sons and daughters and wives and cousins and aunts and uncles, by the necessity of making a living and providing shelter and food and transportation for all these people, and by the urges of one's own
senses to enjoy sex life with the opposite sex, and all the expansions that entails. And so we have gotten deviated from the prime goal of life. And the first steps we can take to turn ourselves again back to the Lord are to chant the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. And that the neophyte has in common with the self-realized soul. Narada Muni, in order to become purified in his previous life, he chanted the names of the Lord. That removed the dust from the mirror of the heart, and once became purified, and then he was transformed in his next life into this transcendental, purified spaceman who could travel at will throughout the material and spiritual worlds. What did he do? Well, he continued chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, knowing that it is a universal principle stemming from the Supreme Personality of God in himself, that one likes to hear the sound of his own name and glories enumerated by others. It is said the sweetest sound in any language is the sound of one's name. Everybody thrills to the sound of their name. It's common. Even the cats and the dogs, the birds. We have one bird named Ramu, another bird named Pedro, another named Radha, another named Oscar. And they all perk up when you say the sound of their names. You can tell they're poised. They're listening very, very keenly, and they often repeat their own names as well. Oscar, Pedro, Ramu, Radhika. The sweetest sound in any language is the sound of one's name. Wherefrom this tendency derives, if not originally present there in the Supreme Personality of God. This is a key principle. So much so that the very first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam emphasizes that God, the absolute truth, is that person from whom everything comes. Janmariya yataha navayari tirashtardisho vignasarat tene brahma yadarira abhayanti karyanti marashom tejo varim tatavi namati shagamish damna shveda sada nirishtish kukas param satyamdi. The absolute truth of God is defined as that person from whom everything comes. Prabhupada used to say, people will ask, who is that girl with Krishna on the cover of the Krishna book? God has a girlfriend? Well, in this material world, boys have girlfriends and girlfriends have boyfriends, so where from that comes, if not present in the absolute truth? However, it is free from what we call mundane inebrities. The love that Krishna exhibits for Radha and vice versa is totally differentiated from the mundane, erotic, self-centered love of this material world. The selfless emblem of pure love is in fact to be found in the relationship between Radha and Krishna. Similarly, we all like to hear the sound of our name enumerated by others. That comes originally from Krishna. Krishna likes to hear the sound of his own name. My favorite place in South India is Tirupati. It's just about everybody's favorite place in South India. And last few times I went there, I haven't been recently, I have to tell you. Been too busy here, but I don't know, it might have been 2012 or so, 10 years ago. Been 4 times, I think. The ISKCON devotees have a beautiful center right at the base of the Tirumala hill. And there's a devotee there, his name is, I believe, Hari Charan. He is born and raised in Tirupati. In fact, his family, his brothers, run a construction company, and they do most of the construction in the city of Tirupati. And he himself is a devotee, said to have visited Lord Balaji Venkateshwaran every day for the last 27 years. And this was as of 2012. Now, he offered on many occasions to take me up to the temple, and because the priests all recognize him, not only because of the influence of his family in the town, but because of his own personal devotion, that he has presented himself front and center before the Lord every day for 27 years. The wait time, most people can wait up to 6 to 8 hours in order to come before Balaji, and then they only get a few seconds before they're obliged to move on. But whenever I had been in the presence of Hari Charan, I would get to be moved right up in front on the fast track because of being with him. What would be 6 or 8 hours for most people would be at most 15 minutes for him. So when I left last time, he said, next time you come, Churu, and I don't know if I'll even make it again in this lifetime, but he held out this wonderful carrot, this wonderful promise. He said, next time you come, Churu, I'll take you up to the temple for Suprabhatam. Suprabhatam means in a mundane sense good morning, but Suprabhatam means more than that in Tirupati. It means that the Lord is awakened at 2:30 in the morning, and he's awakened by the chanting of his glories in Sanskrit by numerous priests. Kings in the past used to be awakened by bards and sages, musicians, singing of their victories on the battlefield, of their diplomatic cues, of their generosity in regards to their citizenry. This is how the king would be awakened in the morning, being reminded of all his noble deeds of leadership and patronage, all the good things that he'd accomplished. Similarly, the Lord is the King of all kings. Ishvara sarvabhutanam ridasharinam chitanam madhaparatanam yana sutra managanava. So in the pre-dawn hours, way in the pre-dawn hours, there's so many people that want to see Balaji that he doesn't go to bed till midnight, and then he has to wake up at 2:30 in the morning. And the singing goes on. And so Hari Chan said, Churu, next time you come, we'll do something really special. We'll go up there, and I'll make sure that you get to sit there during the awakening of the deities in the early morning hours. God likes to hear the sound of his name, fame, glories, and pastimes on the lips of his pure devotees. It doesn't mean that he needs his ego to be fed or to be stoked or stroked. The reason that Krishna likes to hear his name, fame, qualities, and pastime tripping off the lips of pure devotees is that he enjoys the fact that we are awakening or reawakening or reviving our dormant Krishna consciousness, and as such we're on the path back to home, back to God. So the Lord gets excited in anticipation of being reunited with us in love and devotion after such a long absence on our part. Krishna loves it when our dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened, and he experiences keen anticipation, the prospect of our rejoining him in the very near future in the spiritual world. This all begins through the process of our intoning, vibrating the name of Lord, and the Lord taking note that we are now taking those steps, that we need to go back to home. The Lord, who has been dormant, who has been pushed aside, banished to a remote periphery of the heart, now notices that we're open to moving him more into the center. Instead of him just being a resident in the heart when one begins to chant after the ways of the great authorities, one's taking steps to reinstall him as the president of the heart. I remember back in Los Angeles in the 80s, I had other services. I was doing the Festival of India, a number of different things, but I noticed that nobody was greeting the guests who came to the Sunday feast. They would come and go, sometimes without anybody even saying as much as Hare Krishna to them. They were kind of faceless in the crowd. So I felt that wasn't right, and so I would station myself. There are four or five steps up to the temple, and so I would stand outside the door and I would welcome people. Just give them a smile and welcome. And then after 2 or 3 times, I would get to know their names. And so when they would come back the second time, often I would welcome them by name. And I could just see how thrilled they were to not only be greeted, but to be welcomed by name. After a while, the person, Nava Yogendra, who was the life membership director there, he came into my quarters. He said, Churu, I resign. I quit being a life membership director. And I said, okay, that's fine, but why are you telling me? Why don't you go tell the temple president? He said, I'm telling you, Caru, because you are the new life membership director. And I say, whoa, hold on a second. I've got plenty of other duties and responsibilities. He said, whether you like it or not, you are the membership director. Everybody who comes to the temple asks for you by name. Every time I pick up the phone, they only want to talk to you, Caru. So all of that happened because I would greet people by name. It's so important. Your own success, even in material terms, will be greatly, immensely enhanced by any sort of ability on your part to remember name, details, name, wife's names, children's names, and details about those with whom you interact. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was one of the most, if not the most popular president of the United States we ever had. And one of the reasons for his popularity was it said that he would arrive in some city and be met at the airport by a chauffeur. The chauffeur would drive him 5 or 10 minutes to his destination. They would talk. Then the chauffeur would take him back to catch his plane after his engagement was over. It said that he could come back 5 years later and remember that chauffeur by name and ask about his kids. This was one of the preeminent qualities which made FDR one of the most beloved and favorite of all temple presidents. Of all, not temple presidents, American presidents. That he had the uncanny ability to remember people's names. I heard about a guest one time on Ed Sullivan in one of those old shows where they had a studio audience of around 500 people. And one evening, there was a man who shook hands with every arriving guest and asked them their name. And they told him. They didn't think anything of it, and they just all sat down and the show went on. Halfway through the show, half an hour later, they brought this man back on stage. And the host said that having just heard your name once and being introduced to you, he's going to now recite all 500 names of everybody in this audience. And when you hear your name recited from memory, please raise your hand. We started out. Jim Smith, Brett Simmons, Brent Spencer, Jay DeResta, Vinod Kapoor, Anjali, Christine Warden, Jeanette Franks, Michelle Capitan, Natasha Johnson. And he named, by the time he finished, every single of those 500 people in the studio audience had raised their hands. What an amazing ability. Now, this tendency to recognize the Lord by name, to call him by name, is your key back to home, back to God. There's nothing artificial about it. It's a totally innate ability to glorify a superior by saying his name. It may take some effort to remember the name of a chauffeur or a clerk like Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, but it should be wholly natural and spontaneous to remember the name of those who are superior to us, who are more beautiful, more wealthy, more intelligent, more humble. And so to remember and to glorify the name of the Lord is the most natural thing that you can do with your tongue. It is said, Nayam phalam darshanam hi, tanu phalam tadisharam, jiba phalam tadisha kirtanam hi, sudular bata hi loke. Akshno phalam tadisha darshanam hi. The perfection of the eyes is to come before the Lord and offer one's pranams and get darshan of the Lord. The perfection of association, rubbing shoulders with people in a group, is to do it in the kirtan amongst devotees of the Lord. Jiva phalam tadisha kirtanam hi. The perfection of the tongue is to glorify the name, fame, glories of the Lord during the kirtan. I heard about a missionary. You may have heard this story before. It's one of my favorite stories. He found himself in a remote village in Borneo as a missionary. He'd had some medical training before joining the priesthood or the mission. And the peculiarity about this particular village was that it seemed for many generations now, when the young men would reach around the age of 27 or 28, they would be struck with blindness. No one knew how this happened, whether it was genetic or whether it was due to the environment or the drinking water. But for many generations now, anyone over 27 or 28 years old in this village would have to cope with blindness. And the young men in their early 20s pretty much had been resigned to their fate. They had accepted that this is what's going to happen to us. It happened to our great-grandfathers, our grandfathers, our fathers. We expect us. So this missionary did a little experiments. He gathered some of the herbs that were in the area and began administering them to the current generation. A few years went by, and the young men who were 25 became 26, became 27, became 28, 29, 30. And around the time they reached 30, it occurred to them that, hey, the fate which had befallen all those past generations, we seem to have sidestepped it. And the only thing that's different are the ministrations and the potions that this missionary has given us. So they properly, I think, credited him with solving a generational curse, a generational problem. They asked him to come before the tribal council. They said to him, "You're the one, as far as we can tell, who's relieved us of this curse, this burden. And we are immensely, eternally indebted to you for that. However, there is no word for thank you in our language. So how we're going to express our gratitude is that wherever we go, amongst ourselves, amongst neighboring tribes, when we go down the river to trade goods, to barter and trade, whoever we meet, wherever we go, we are going to say your name." That is going to be our principal way of expressing our gratitude. And anybody who comes into contact with us in any way, shape, or form, whether it be societal, whether it be through business, or whether it be through our being relations, they will all hear your name. That is how we express our gratitude. We go back to Narada Muni, son of a maidservant, illegitimate son of a maidservant, never knew his father, a child at risk. He would be called a child at risk by all the modern day child psychologists. And yet, after the ways of the sages who are spending the 4 months of the rainy season chanting, discussing the pastimes of the Lord, taking the prasadam, Narada Muni adopted the practice of chanting the holy names of the Lord, calling out to the Lord through his name. Nama Chintamani Chaitanya Raja Vigraha Purnashoda Nitra Binat Bam Binanamino. The name of Krishna is compared to Chintamani, just like Chintamani or touchstone turns base metal into gold. Anything that you touch with touchstone will change the value of that which is touched from base metal to gold. Similarly, the name of the Lord is such that anytime you chant it, it transforms a dull, leaden, forgetful, dirty heart into a lotus flower, which is a suitable place for the Lord to enter, come, and sit down. Mata diripakalia paritam haritam baramarapkaritangana said, the Lord sits on the lotus-like purified heart of the pure devotees whose practice is chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. Ata Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhavedram Sevan Mukhi Jivadu Shayam Mivashparatim. No wonder this is our gateway practice. Our gateway practice. Not only is it the beginning, but it's in the middle and it's at the end. It's an eternal function of souls on the path of transcendence to understand the Lord by invoking him through the chanting of his holy names. Through the chanting of the holy names, you get the attention of the Lord. Through the chanting of the holy names, the Lord starts to reveal himself and to reactivate himself within the hearts of the devotees. Why? Because he's pleased by the transcendental service which is rendered unto him. And that service begins with the tongue. The tongue is like the rudder. If you want to know what your life is going to be in the future, then take note of the words that are coming out of your mouth now. Big ocean liner. Where it's going to go and what direction it's going to go and what port it's going to put up is determined by the rudder, which is actually a very small, volume-wise. The rudder is a very small part of the overall ship. But depending on whether you turn the rudder to port or starboard, that's going to establish where the boat is going to end up a year from now, 5 years from now. Similarly, the words that are coming out of your mouth, that are rolling over your tongue, are going to determine whether you end up in the lower species of life, suffering the pangs of material miseries, or whether you're going to end up in the spiritual world with the choirs of angels. One poet said, "Long did I toil and found no earthly rest. Far did I roam and found no earthly home. At last I sought them in his sheltering breast, who opens his arms and bids the weary come. With him I found a home, a rest divine, and I since them am his and he is mine. The good I have is from his stores supplied, the ill is only what he deems the best. With God as friend I'm rich with naught beside, and poor without him, though of all possessed. Changes may come, I take or I resign, content while I am his and he is mine. Changes may come, but in the Lord no change is seen. He's like a glorious sun that wanes not nor declines. He walks above the storms and clouds serene, and on his devotees inward darkness shines. While here, alas, I know but half his love, but half discern him and but half adore. But when I meet him in the realms above, I hope to love him fully, praise him more, and show and tell amid the kirtans divine how fully I am his and he is mine." Well, no one can understand the Lord through these blunt, covered, contaminated material senses. However, when you begin to purify the senses, beginning with the tongue, the Lord, who has always been within the heart, makes himself evident. He's pleased with your practice of chanting the name of the Lord, and those senses which otherwise could not encompass or understand or measure the Lord purifies those very same senses and enters within the realm of perception of the devotee. Otherwise, without the exclusive and devotionally minded chanting of the holy names of the Lord, there is no other way that one can come to see and to associate with the Lord. He's called a dokshaja. That means he's beyond the range of our mundane senses. It is only by purifying our senses through devotional activity that we can come to understand everything about the Lord. And the only way we can come to understand everything about the Lord is not through anything that we do, but it's through chanting the holy names we invoke the grace of the Lord. Now, some people may object, well, I chant the name of Krishna and I haven't gotten any particular realizations. The problem with you, sir, is that you chant the name of Krishna, yes, but you chant the name of Ganesh, you chant the name of Shiva, you chant the name of Durga, you chant the name of Kali, and you lump them all together. You intermingle the names of the absolute truth with the names of demigods and even of human beings. That is not pleasing to the Lord. You have to recognize. If you go up to somebody and you say, George, no, Harry, Jim, Sam, that's not going to be very impressive. Maybe you made an effort to remember their name, but because you cannot actually remember their name, because you're guessing and throwing all these names out, it's not going to be particularly pleasing to the person that you're trying to impress. You have to nail it. You have to hit the arrow on the target. You have to know the specific name of the specific person to really get their attention. Otherwise, if you just call them generically, hey man, or hey woman, or as one famous actress used to call everyone, darling, how are you, darling? It's not going to be impressive. You're taking that person for granted. And you're taking the Lord for granted when you're speculating that addressing him by any name is acceptable to the Lord. This basis for this way of thinking is called Mayavadiism, or impersonalism. That because the Lord is ultimately impersonal, you can call him by any name. Or sometimes the impersonalists, they say, God has no name. God has no name. That is not a fact. Namavyarva kriyaguna. Ramadi Mortishu Kalani Mena Tishnan and Avatarama Karoda Krishna Shohim Shamavapano Govinda Mari Purusham Tamham. Lord Brahma, no less an authority than the creator of this universe, Lord Brahma asserts that Krishna has many names, many incarnations. As there are purposes, there are as many names of Krishna, and so therefore he's known variously as Rama, Krishna, Govinda, Narayana, Vishnu, Adokshaja, Varaha. Nrsinga's appearance day is coming up on May 14th. Parasaram. The conditioned soul, generally speaking, when he's affected by mental speculation or impersonalism, fails to understand the specificity of the Lord and the specificity of the practices of great sages like Narada Muni. Someone may say, well, why just Krishna? Aren't you just like the born-again Christians who only say Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light? So when you have so many other names and you have so many other practices and so many other demigods, Ganesh and Shiva and Indra and Chandra and Vayu and Lord, why do you guys fanatically insist on Krishna? Because Krishna is everything. Krishna is Ganesh, Krishna is Indra. But why would you go to little wells and little ponds and little creeks to serve the same purposes that can be universally served by the great body of water? It says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yavanartu Tapade Tavan Sarvashavedashu Brahmanashavedam. In the village India, you have to go to one well for washing your clothes, another well for washing your dishes, another well for drawing water for taking a bath, another well for feeding the animals, watering the animals, because there's a danger of cross-contamination. So you have to be very careful. Use the different wells for different purposes. But when you come to a huge lake, you don't have to have those concerns anymore. The body of water is sufficiently great, you don't have to worry about cross-contamination. So all the purposes that are achieved piecemeal, fragmentally, by chanting the names of the demigods, or even human beings, are automatically achieved by chanting the names of the Lord of Vaikuntha, the chief, Aham Adiri Devanam Marishanam Chasarva Shaham, he who is the source of the demigods and the devas. We'll finish with this verse today. The Srimad Bhagavatam 6th chapter 34th verse, it's just a little bit further on, in fact, than where we are now. It says, Ete di atarachidanam matra sparshadijaya mahum bhavam sindhu plavodishu hari chananadavanam. It said, taking shelter or chanting the names of any less of a personality than Krishna, including Shiva, Brahma, is like trying to cross the ocean by holding on to the tail of a dog. As opposed to the power and saving grace of demigods, Krishna is compared to an ocean liner. Now, which would you rather employ to cross the ocean? The tail of a dog or an ocean liner? Now, this verse says, Bhava Sindhu Plavo Drishto. If you want a suitable vehicle for going from one side of the ocean of birth and death to the other side, whereby one's immortality is revived, you have to take shelter of none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narada Muni personally testifies, and I don't know about you, but this is good enough for me, that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to contact with the material senses can cross the ocean of nescience on a most suitable boat. What is that boat? The chanting of the name, fame, glories, and activities of none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Natasya karanam karanam chabinine tat samasya vyadakas parasya shakti vivada shrabhavaka balagara. Absolute truth is defined as that from whom everything comes, as that personality than whom no one is greater or equal. So if you want all good things in your life for you and your loved ones. Focus in, according to the advice and the practices of such as Narada Muni, on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is head and shoulders above all of the emanations, avatars, and incarnations. Direct your love and your praise to his lotus feet. Ayananda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame kripayatava para pankajastila. Join with the host of liberated souls, all of whom have aspired to serve as a mote of dust at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. That has been Motivational Monday. So appreciative to Anjali for joining us, as well as Nate. Good morning, darling. He says, darling. Nate would remember that. Some of us of the older generation would know to what and to whom I'm alluding when I talked about that. Contra this principle is common practice just called devotees Prabhu or Mataji. Well, that calling devotees by their devotional names or even Caru or Mataji is also evocative of the Supreme Personality of God. And Prabhu means you're my master, and I'm following, I'm cherishing the association of other devotees, which is our practice for going back to home, back to God. Good morning, Jay. Vinod Kapoor, Ram Kishore. Enjoy working on the relevance committee with Ram Kishore. He's very, very extremely impressive, confident person, moving things along. Michelle, thanks for dropping on us this morning. Janatari, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, and good morning. Natasha, nice talking to you. And Larry at the Sunday feast last night, and Brent Spencer. Appreciate your being with us as always. We'll be back tomorrow for Transcendental Tuesday. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.